dies in a hard city. The glass shattered before Emeka even realized he'd knocked it over. It hit the polished concrete floor of the Gangnam Gallery in a clean, crystalline explosion. Red wine fanning out across white tiles like a wound. And every head in the room turned toward him at once. 40-something people in designer everything. Champagne flutes paused halfway to lips. Conversation dying mid-syllable. The kind of silence that had teeth. Sorry. Emeka crouched immediately, reaching for the larger shards with bare hands, before a gallery attendant rushed over and stopped him with a quiet, horrified, "Please, sir, don't." He straightened, brushing imaginary glass from his palms, and offered the room the only thing he had, a wide, unguarded smile that said, I know, I'm a disaster." His teeth were very white against deep brown skin. The smile did nothing to restore the ambient temperature of the room. He hadn't even meant to come here tonight. He'd followed a flyer, a literal paper flyer tucked under the windshield wiper of his professor's bicycle outside Hongik University. Liminal spaces, new acquisitions in monochrome, curated exhibition, one night only, and the thumbnail had shown a photograph that stopped him cold. A woman standing in a doorway, neither inside nor outside, her face a study in held breath. He'd pulled the flyer free and pocketed it before realizing he'd just stolen his professor's invitation. He was not supposed to be here. He knew this in the abstract way you know a warning sign in a language you don't fully speak. He could read the social cues, the bespoke suits, the way the caterers moved with their eyes low. This was a money room. The art on the walls was less about beauty and more about ownership. But he was here now, and the photograph he'd come for was somewhere in this space, and Emeka Okafor had never been able to make himself leave a place before he found what he came for. He accepted a new glass of wine from the attendant, the man's smile professionally neutral, and moved deeper into the gallery. He found her in the east wing, alone. Not alone the way people are alone at parties, scanning the room for someone to anchor to. Alone, the way a painting is alone on a wall. Complete, contained, requiring nothing. She was standing in front of a large monochrome print, arms loosely crossed, head tilted slightly left. Her dress was the color of smoke. Her hair was pulled back in a way that suggested effort made invisible. She was, objectively, the most composed person Emeka had ever seen in his 23 years of living, and something about the quality of her stillness made him stop walking. She wasn't looking at the photograph. She was looking through it. He didn't think about what he was doing. He almost never did. He crossed the room and stopped a few feet to her left, tilting his own head to look at the same print. A long exposure shot of a Seoul intersection at 3 a.m., the light trails of cars like calligraphy across dark pavement, and said, in the half-voice people use in galleries, "He shot this from below, yeah? Like he was lying on the ground." She turned. Her eyes were very dark and very direct, and the first thing they did was assess him. He saw it, the quick, practiced read, looking for the thing people always looked for when they met her. Recognition, the slight shift in posture that meant you know who I am. His posture didn't shift. He was still looking at the photograph, eyebrows up, genuinely interested. "The angle," she said after a pause. "You can tell from the way the light distorts at the edges." "Exactly." He looked at her then and smiled, not the disaster smile from earlier, something quieter. He must have had cars passing 3 feet from his head. That's either brave or completely unhinged. Something moved across her face, very fast, like a curtain lifting and falling before you could see what was behind it. "Probably both," she said. Seoyeon," said a voice behind her. A man materialized at her shoulder, broad, grey-suited, the kind of face that had learned to show nothing. He said something low in Korean. Her shoulders moved, imperceptibly. "I know," she said in Korean. Then, in English, a degree warmer. "Excuse me?" She walked away without looking back. Emeka watched her go. Then he looked back at the photograph, brave or completely unhinged, he thought, and wasn't sure which one applied to himself right now. He saw her again 20 minutes later, standing beside a man who commanded the room the way weather commands a landscape. People adjusted themselves to him without knowing they were doing it. Older, silver at his temples, Yoon Daeho, if Emeka had known the name, which he didn't, the most powerful criminal architect in Seoul, the man who had decided 18 years ago, that the city's legitimate economy and its shadow economy would henceforth operate as a single organism, with himself as the nervous system. 3 politicians had tried to dismantle what he built. 2 of them had retired early, quietly, to places outside Seoul. The third had simply stopped making noise. Emeka saw a man who looked like money and weight. That was all. He saw the woman beside him, the smoke-colored dress, the contained posture, and felt something he couldn't name, pulling him across the room again. Not desire exactly. Or not only desire, more like the feeling of seeing a photograph and knowing there was a story in it you hadn't gotten yet. He stopped at a safe distance, looking at a different print, a staircase concrete, descending into white fog, and waited. She came to him. He didn't expect that. "You're staring," she said, quietly, stopping beside him. "I'm looking at the staircase." "You were looking at me?" "I was looking at the staircase and you happened to be in the peripheral vicinity." He paused. "Both things can be true." She made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Almost. You're not from here." "Nigeria, Lagos, currently Mapogu, on a scholarship that covers tuition and not much else." He offered his hand. "Emeka." She looked at his hand for a beat, then took it. Her grip was brief and deliberate. "Seoyeon. Do you know the photographer? Is that why you're here?" "My father collects him." A pause so small most people would have missed it. "I'm here because I'm always where my father is." That sounds exhausting. The curtain again, lifting, falling. It has its rhythms. "What would you be doing tonight," he said, "if you weren't here?" She looked at him. The question had clearly surprised her, not because it was inappropriate, but because no one had asked it. In a room full of people who knew exactly who she was and calibrated every word accordingly, here was someone asking her where she would rather be. Like she was a person with preferences. Like that was a normal thing to wonder about. "I don't know," she said. And the honesty of it seemed to surprise even her. "I'd be in my studio," Emeka said. "I'm working on this series, portraits, but the subjects are looking at something outside the frame, not the camera, and I can never quite get the light right. It's driving me insane." He shook his head. "Sorry, that's probably not interesting to you." "It is," she said. And she meant it. They talked for 14 minutes. He knew the exact duration because the playlist cycling through the gallery's speakers completed one full rotation. He'd clocked the opening track, and when it looped, he realized they'd been standing there long enough that the caterers had begun clearing the canapes. They talked about the photographs on the walls, about Lagos versus Seoul, about what it felt like to live in a city that didn't know your name yet, about the specific loneliness of arriving somewhere new and beautiful, and feeling grateful and displaced at the same time. She said very little about herself. He didn't push. When the grey-suited man appeared again at her shoulder, she said, "I have to go." "Okay. I don't usually—" She stopped. Started again. "I don't usually talk to people at these things." "I believe it," he said. "You look like you were having a completely different private experience when I walked in." "I was." She looked at him directly. This was better. She left. He stood there, holding his wineglass, and the feeling in his chest was warm and strange and slightly off balance, like a painting hung at a fractionally wrong angle. Nearly perfect, but something in your body knew. He found her Instagram 3 days later, by accident, through a mutual follow with another Nigerian student at his university who had photographed her at some charity gala. He looked at her page. 1,200 posts, 4 million followers. Every comment was either reverence or want. He scrolled until his thumb was tired and felt, if anything, more confused. He didn't know what Yoon Daeho was. He didn't know what the name meant, what the infrastructure around her was, what the grey-suited man was employed to prevent. He saw a woman who looked different in every photograph, not because she was changing her appearance, but because she was always slightly performing something. And he thought about the 14 minutes in the gallery when she had not been performing anything at all. He sent her a message, the kind of message that was either brave or completely unhinged. "Hi, I'm the one who broke the glass. I'm working on the portrait series I mentioned, and I want to photograph someone who's thinking about something they can't say. I think you know how to do that. Can I buy you coffee as a first step toward convincing you? She read it immediately. He could see the read receipt. She didn't respond for 2 days. Then, Yeon Nam Dong. Saturday, 11 a.m. There's a place called Cafe Bora. I'll be in the back. Cafe Bora on a Saturday was gentle and warm, smelling of lavender and toasted grain. She was already there when he arrived. Not waiting exactly. Present. Her hair was down. She was wearing something simple and dark, and she looked, for the first time since he'd seen her, like someone who was not dressed for a room. You came, he said. You asked very specifically, she said. I found that hard to dismiss. He ordered for both of them, because she seemed paralyzed by the menu in the particular way of someone who usually had other people manage these small logistics. He ordered the taro latte and a honey butter toast and set them down between them and said, Okay, tell me something true. She blinked. Excuse me. Not a secret, just something true. Something you know is true. Start there. A long pause. Outside the window, a couple was fighting quietly on the pavement, gesturing with their hands, faces turned away from each other. Seoyeon watched them. I haven't wanted anything in a long time, she said. I've had preferences. I've had things I was moving toward. But wanting is different. Wanting has a direction. I haven't had direction in a long time. The honesty of it was so clean and sudden that Emeka went quiet for a moment. What changed? He said. I don't know yet. He looked at her. She was not performing this. There was no audience here, no grey-suited men, no father filling the gravitational center of the room, no 4 million followers. Just the lavender and the honey butter and the couple arguing outside and him and her saying a true thing. Can I photograph you? He said. Not for the series, just for me. Now, with my phone. That's not a very impressive artistic instrument. I'm not trying to impress you right now. She looked at him for a long, measuring moment. Then she looked out the window, at the couple who had stopped arguing and were now standing very close together, forehead to forehead, a private world made of 2 people. And her face did the thing it had done in the gallery, the curtain lifting, and this time it stayed up a little longer. He took the photograph. It was the best thing he'd ever made. They met 4 more times over the following 3 weeks, once at the Han River, where they sat on the bank and argued affectionately about whether Van Gogh would have thrived or disintegrated in the age of social media. Once at a small museum in Insadong, where he pulled her in front of a painting of a storm and said, Stand here and look at it like you've been waiting for it. And she had. And he'd photographed that too, not understanding why his hands were slightly unsteady. Once, on the 4th meeting, they were walking through Bukchon Hanok village as the light turned amber gold, and she stopped walking. Can I ask you something? Yeah, he said. Do you know who my father is? He thought about it. I know he collects photographers and commands a lot of real estate at parties. She looked at him. That's all? Should there be more? The silence between them was very full. She was deciding something. He could feel it, the way you feel a door deciding whether to open. There are people, she said carefully, who would not be comfortable knowing me because of who he is, what the family represents. Seoyeon. He said her name simply, the way he said everything, without ceremony, without the careful architecture of awareness that everyone else built around her. I don't know what your father represents. I just know that you look at photographs like they owe you something. And you ordered your coffee like you'd never had to choose before, and in 14 minutes at that gallery, you were more honest than most people are in a year. That's what I know about you. She turned her face away, looked at the old rooftops, the clay tiles, the city layered over centuries of itself. When she turned back, her eyes were bright in a way that was not quite tears, but was close to the geography of tears. I've been performing safety my whole life, she said, staying in the correct rooms, saying the correct things, being near the correct people so nothing could reach me. A breath. I didn't realize how exhausting that was until I stood next to you in that gallery and you didn't know. You didn't know any of it. And I was just a woman looking at a photograph. You were, he said. You are. It's terrifying, she said. Being seen like that, it's the most terrifying thing I've ever felt. She paused. I think it might also be the most alive I've ever felt. He reached out and took her hand. Not urgently, not as a move, just the way you might steady someone standing at the edge of something high, confirming, I'm here, you're not going to fall. She held on. They stood there in the amber light, the old city breathing around them, and Emeka thought about the portrait series, the subjects looking at something outside the frame, and understood, with the full weight of it arriving at once, that he had already found his subject, that she had been standing in front of him since the glass shattered. That innocence wasn't naivety. Innocence was the refusal to let the world's definitions write themselves over what was actually in front of you. He had looked at Yoon's Seoyeon and seen a woman. Just that. Just the real, private, directional, wanting things woman underneath all the armor. And somehow, inexplicably, that gaze had been the most powerful thing that had ever entered her life. Not because he was extraordinary, because he was simply completely present. The grey-suited men would come eventually. The world she lived in would assert itself. It always did, with its weight and its warnings and its architecture of threat. There would be complications. There would be rooms Emeka didn't know how to enter, and languages he didn't speak, and a father whose attention would feel like weather. He wasn't unaware that something serious was threading itself into his life. But right now, in Bukshon, with the light going gold and her hand in his, and the old city holding still around them like a photograph with perfect exposure, right now, they were just two people who had found, against all probability, a space where they could simply be. And that space was not a gallery or a cafe or a riverside or a village of clay-tiled rooftops. That space was built out of the way he looked at her. That was where she lived now, for the first time. That was home.